The following paid program is furnished by the Coalition. It's for basic entertainment and informational purposes only and is solely responsible for its content. It does not necessarily reflect the views of Cumulus Media, its management, or its staff. AM 790 Talk and Business presents The Coalition, a weekly one-hour show that looks at all sides of local, regional, and national news as well as current events. Join us now for The Coalition.
And yes, we are the Coalition, live on AM 790 Talk Radio, coalitionradio.us, facebook.com/the Coalition Radio. I am the PO taxpayer. Today, a very special show. Questions, comments, refer them to at Twitter. PO taxpayer, that's P, that's O, that's TAXPAYER. This week, I'm poor and pissed off. Not because of our guest, though. Today in studio, we've got Rob Paquin, Executive Director of the Rhode Island Republican Party. We'd also like to thank this week's sponsor, the Rhode Island Republican Party, for sponsoring and supporting independent radio. Rob, welcome to the show.
P.O., thank you for having me, and happy to sponsor independent radio. It's great to have different voices in the state, and I'm really very happy to be here. Looking forward to our chat.
Well, we are issues-driven. We are outrage porn-free. We define outrage porn as anything you do with Christmas trees, gun raffles, Chick-fil-A, whether or not McDonald's is making the minimum wage as they collapse financially. We don't care about that. Today, though, we are going to violate. No, not just violate. We're going to crush, decimate, reduce to tears one of the key precepts, principles of the Coalition Radio, and that is, of course, we do not typically define handicap races. We don't typically care about fundraising, but I've got Mr. Insider here, the Sith Lord of the Republican Party, Darth Vader himself, according to some would have it, but clearly one of the adults in the room. If you were in front of the United States Senate, or let's just put it as in a testimony to our dear departed friend Felipe and Jorge, if you were in front of Halitosis Hall, and you were to define the state of the Republican Party in one word, what would that be?
Changing.
Evolving?
That could be good.
That good? So it's progress.
These are some scary words to associate with the Republican Party, usually, right? The general public would tell you we don't want to hear about evolution or progressive thoughts, but no, those are two words that are pretty apt for the situation. As you well know, and anybody who's been involved with Rhode Island politics for any amount of time, we've done a poor job over the past couple decades even of defining what we are and what we stand for and having voters in Rhode Island understand what the GOP is, what makes us alike with the National Party, what makes us different. And the biggest failure there was letting the Democrats define us for so long. So that's probably the biggest evolution or progress that we're making this year.
Well, I want you to think of today as an intervention. You're surrounded by a friend. All right, literally. So the first step, of course, in that intervention is admission of a prior problem. However, you've taken the step, and you're already working on that. Now, if you're not a Republican, if you are semi-politically active, we've got a lot of folks in the music community who listen, a lot of people who are, relatively new to activism. Give us, if you will, let's lay out the landscape of the Republican Party, because there are a number of organizations that people may or may not properly associate with the Rhode Island GOP, and there is a party structure there that at times the novice or the newbie finds a little confusing. So you are the executive director. You are a paid professional on staff to run the organization on a day-to-day basis, correct?
That's true.
All right, and you report to which Smiley?
Mark, yes. The more conservative Smiley, if you will.
Brett, when he actually mattered, thought he ran you.
He did try to get me to do a few things. No, I'm kidding, of course. But no, great question. So I think what's important, I'm going to give you the most unbiased, non-rhetorical explanation of the difference between the two parties in the shortest time you've ever heard.
Okay.
Republicans want to take less of your money and leave you responsible to live long and prosper, okay? And if you don't, sometimes that's where you run into trouble. That's a criticism that we get, okay? But the idea is that we give people personal responsibility to go out there and make the most of the American dream. The Democrats want to take more of your money, but be there with a parachute when you fall out of the plane. And it's really just two different ways of looking at the same thing. Do you want more government to take care of you, or do you want less government and you're on your own to either become a millionaire or find yourself dead broke?
Well, as we've found recently, with whether it be anything from Ebola to Capitol security, the parachute's usually broken, though, isn't it?
There's a string or two missing.
Right. So you push the panic button, and you're still in a free fall.
Yeah, no, that's true, and that's why I'm a Republican, because I think that when you task somebody with rising up and being the best they can be, whether it be a citizen, whether it be a taxpayer, however you want to define their role in society, I think people rise to the occasion when self-empowered, and that's what, at 15 years old, made me decide that I was a Republican, registered shortly after my 16th birthday for an election 2 years later, and haven't looked back.
Excellent. So you serve as executive director. Who else is on the, if you will, the administration? You have Mr. Smiley, who is
the big dog,
elected director, and now seemingly a race that we're revisiting because of other controversies, elected by one vote, but he seems to have taken control. Who else is in the firmament, the stars of the Republican Party?
Sure. So one of our rising stars is our new finance director, Dylan Barrett. Now, this is a guy that you're never going to hear of unless you send a check. And it's hard to get those. It's hard to fundraise in Rhode Island as a Republican. He's come in straight out of getting his bachelor's degree at Roger Williams, taken some training classes at the RNC down in Washington, come in and come up with an entire fundraising strategy completely on his own, without a lot of input from Mark and I, brought it to us and said, hey guys, how about we do this? Mm-hmm. And our eyes lit up. We were shocked. I mean, here's a 22-year-old recent college grad coming in, and he already gets it, and we've already got mailers going out. It's just, he's one of the unsung heroes. So before we get too deep into the structural organization, I have to give a shout out to Dylan Barrett, our finance director. Amazing young man, going places. The chances of us holding on to him for any extended period of time are probably slim to none.
Well, that is the hard part, though, isn't it? Because, I mean, ultimately, the Rhode Island could be accused of being the AAA when it comes to political. I'm a Yankees fan, so eventually you go up to the big leagues, play for Boston, and if you're good, you get taken over by the Yankees.
I don't know if we agree on that one, but
so elaborate a little bit, if you will, at least on what you're willing to discuss publicly about that fundraising strategy, because the constant reference to and I want to spend some time on the show clearing up the urban legends, because here we are bipartisan. We're the only show in Rhode Island that routinely has liberals, progressive, Green Party folks on at the same time with conservatives and libertarians. So we want politics in general to thrive in the state. Give us a little background on that strategy and how it's going, and how is the fundraising arm of the Republican Rhode Island Party doing?
So better than ever is the short answer to that. To delve into it a little bit deeper, I can tell you last year after Mark Smiley took over as chair, this is a year before I started, of course, they had, I believe, one of their biggest fundraising years to date, not including any inbound money that we get from the National Party. They did about $150K last year, off-cycle, off-season. That's been unheard of. In our parts for a number of years.
Well, it's important you say that. Let me jump in, because the general consensus is, and that's why I want to clear up the urban legends, is that you guys are broke.
Well, far from it. Far from it. As of Friday when I left, I believe we've still got about $50K between our two accounts, both federal and state, and a lot of that's going to be spent on Monday when I write checks to printers. We've, spoiler alert, we've got some mail going out against some of the Democrat candidates that will hit later this week that really tells the truth about the type of cliff that we could be pushed over if we don't get some balance in the General Assembly.
There you go. Now, so in terms of reaching out, is it primarily mail-driven? Is it digital? What's...
Well, now it's a little bit of everything with Dylan's ingenuity and my marketing and sales background. I think together we really do a great job working the mail circuit, working the email blasts. We had an email blast that went out the other week to about 8,000 supporters. Kind of just the point of view from one of our college interns that's there. He finished his bachelor's degree. He's going for his master's. He's interning us with us this semester, and he's a finance intern. Graduated from Bryant, and it was just kind of a very open, honest conversation about what it's like to be a finance intern, what it's like to raise money, and so those unique glimpses into the party, I think, make people a little more comfortable with signing away money to an organization that, maybe 5 or 10 years ago they wouldn't have been caught dead writing a check to.
All right, so fundraising has picked up. Are you, in terms of where you're spending that money, is that going primarily to General Assembly races? Is it sort of a big, wide open field? You're going to spend a little everywhere? What?
It's a little everywhere, but primarily the General Assembly. I've told people, and it's it's really disappointing that this is the case, but we have to start somewhere. And we have 6 Republicans in the House. You know, the most powerful body to me in this entire state is the House of Representatives, and of course the Speaker of the House being the head honcho. When you have 6, you almost could just have 1 and really it not be any different, because at least there'd be somebody to serve on each committee. Mm-hmm. And if you went to any other state and said, you know, our lower house has 6 out of 75, they would laugh and say, no, really, how many Republicans do you have? So we are desperate to get representation in that seat. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that every Democrat is bad. You look at Rep. Dickinson, Rep. Macbeth, who came out on the right side of 38 Studios as Democrats. You have to commend those two. But I would trade probably 1 or both of my arms if you told me that for a decade we could go 45 Dems and 30 Republicans in the House. If that happened, I think the state would look very different than it does now. So that's our end game, is to really get the General Assembly boosted. Statewide candidates always tend to have their own gravitas. They don't ever really need a ton of help from the party. And the Senate is just, it's tough. It's bigger districts. It's more money. And speaking openly and honestly, you know, taking back seats in the Senate is probably a plan that we'll go after in the next 2 to 4 years. Although we do certainly have some good Senate challengers. Our focus in 2014 is the House, and we're not afraid to say that.
Okay. The within the heavens of the Rhode Island Republican Party, there are a number of organizations, all purport to represent at one level or another a Republican viewpoint. The first one that comes to mind seems to be at least a very well-run, tight-knit group called RERA.
Yes.
That's run by Ray McKay, who
good friend of mine.
At one point was attempting to at least run for the Senate seat currently held by Jack Reed, and then ran into that whole foolishness with, I guess some government officials are allowed to run for office and others aren't.
Yeah, we weren't happy with the way that went down. I know from conversations I've had with Ray, his commitment is still there. I don't know what he'll be doing in the near future, but don't expect him to go away. He's one of our true, strong, fiscal and social conservatives that make up a nice, rich tapestry that is the RIGOP. And I love to have him be a part of it. He's a fighter, and he was really disappointed with how this turned out. But, there'll be another day, and there'll be another Ray, and it'll be nice to see him run when he gets the chance.
Now, is RERA separately chartered from the Rhode Island Republican Party?
They are, but because of the size of their organization and the rules of our bylaws, they actually do have an elected seat or a seat to them on our state central committee, which I believe Ray, as president, probably gets that automatic bid. I have to look at the roster. But, they are probably one of the most active groups within the RIGOP, that is separate and apart from the state party. The next big group, I think, is up and coming, which I'm actually proud to be a member of, is the Republican Liberty Caucus, which is for those of us that describe ourselves as libertarian Republicans. Now, I know you may have a few thoughts on that, but
yeah,
we've got an hour, right?
Yeah, we've got an hour. We'll highlight that, please. Make a little note in your notes. We have to discuss that. Now, you've also got this tenuous, at least public connection between you and the Tea Party.
Sure. Yeah. No. I mean, most people recognize that the Tea Party tended to come from people of conservative mindedness, smaller government at the very least. I don't want to sit here and say that they're disenfranchised Republicans, because they and I would both turn around and say, well, that's not really the whole story. There's a few of them in there, but largely they're just folks that want to see less government intrusion in their lives. They're struggling to get by like most of us. And I'm proud when they're associated with us. Some of the national stuff that you see on television is the RNC in bed with the Tea Party? Is the RNC afraid of the Tea Party? I don't know. Maybe yes, maybe no to some of those. But let's, my attitude is let's bring those people to the table and let's see where our common ground is. My rule, and I'm going to probably reference this 3 or 4 more times in the show, is 70-30. Okay? If you're in agreement with somebody on 70% of the issues, you need them on your team.
Okay. Now, the Tea Party itself in this state seems to be going through a transition. Under Susan Wynn's leadership, it seems to be a pretty tight, well-run, on-message organization. I agree with some of the message, disagree with some. Now, however, it strikes me as being somewhat rudderless. Interestingly enough, on social media, one of their leaders, I guess, Mike, I can't pronounce his name.
I say Puyana. I can't vouch for the accuracy of that, but he's never corrected me.
Tried to reach out to me to talk about something that was going on with RI Roadmap this week. Unfortunately, he had blocked me, so he was never able to get it told. It would appear that the new leadership is a little bit more insular, a little bit more combative.
A little more PO'd.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah, but they don't seem to brook. One of my frustrations is always whether it be progressive Democrats, who remarkably are more open to